Okay. After I said all that stuff about recording, I forgot to hit the button. Um, so we have chapters all across the US. We're actually building more chapters as we speak. So Las Vegas just recently launched. Last year we launched Tennessee, Baltimore, and Wichita. We have chapters in, we've got 3 chapters in Florida. We've got chapters all up and down the West Coast. Name a city, we probably have a NAP chapter there.
Cool.
As for NAP San Jose, we've been around for about 5 or 6 years now. We don't do a lot of the typical professional development, how to write a resume or do an interview, because so many of our companies that people belong to already do that. So as I said, we really work on the community building. But with that, let me go ahead and turn things over to one of our other leadership team members, Noel Blanco, who will be doing the honor of introducing our speaker for this evening.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Marinka. Yes, I'm Noel Blanco, Chief Communications Officer with NAP San Jose. I am on the leadership team, and I get to introduce my dear friend. I'm sorry, I'm using a weird accent. I don't know where that's coming from. I just realized I will try to be normal in introducing Alethia. So I'll read Alethia's awesome bio, and please forgive me for some of the words that I will try not to sound so white saying, but I will do my best. So Aletheia Elwood, also known as Venus Veritas, is an international Filipino American artist who has been a creative for over the last 10 years. Alethia's tattoo studies and adventure began in late 2013 in her hometown of Dumaguete City, Philippines. Throughout the journey of learning how to become an artist, she fell in love with learning and studying the art of and ancient birthrights of tattoo and its impact on culture, leading her to realize the importance of reviving the ancient art of tattoos and its origins to the Pintados of the Philippines. A little tricky, but I want to honor what you wrote in your awesome bio. So.
You did it. You did it to the T. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is something I'm really passionate about. And I've been studying this for the last 6 years. And I feel like even, I don't know, maybe even in another life, I was studying this too. So this is something that I'm very passionate about. And today I don't have any like visual aids for y'all, but we will be talking. And I do want to have like question portion at the end. So if you do have questions, I will try my best to go over as much as I can within the limited amount of time. There's a lot to talk about. So, so just to let you know. So before we get started on more of like the details, I was hoping that everybody who's here now present would just take a few deep breaths with me. And just center in on remembering our ancestors and remembering that we have this is an ancient birthright for all Filipino people, all people of Southeast Asia, actually. And we have this flowing through our bodies, and our ancestors were a part of this birthright since the beginning of time. And I just want to call in on the energies of our ancestors and ask them to be here with us tonight. So let's take a few deep breaths. Close our eyes if we can. And if we can just take a moment to put ourselves in the islands. Put ourselves in the islands of the Philippines. If you've been there before, I know you can already see the ocean. I know you can see the lush greenery that surrounds us. I know you can hear the birds chirping. You can see the dagat, the waves crashing by. In the faint distance, maybe even you can hear the sound That's the sound of our ancestors getting ink tattooed into their skin. And this is something that all our ancestors participated in different manners, in different ways. And from a distance, you can hear it, and maybe it's even getting louder. Chok, 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 chok. And you can feel the spirit of the family, of the tribe, of our families and our communities gathering together to participate in a birthright that all of our ancestors went through. And today, that's what we're gonna take the time to talk about. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to visualize and to participate in, is just that reminder that it's not that distant from us. You know, it feels so foreign, but then when we sit down and think about that sound, and when we sit down and we center in, we can actually connect with our ancestors. We can actually connect to the sound of the ink hitting our skin, and we can actually connect to something that is so beautiful and ancient. So thank you so much again for everyone who's decided to come tonight to listen. I just also want to say that there are so many islands in the Philippines. So when I'm discussing what I'm talking about with you, I just want you to know that every single island has different rites and different ceremonies and different ways of doing what they do. But what I will be covering is things that I know and the knowledge that I know from traveling in the Philippines firsthand and exploring these birthrights and speaking to people who are also very passionate about this, who have been studying this their whole life. And mainly that. And also going back, you know, into my own family and learning about it, and also my own experience as a tattoo artist, getting tattoos for myself and trying to revive the culture of Filipino tattoos. So let's get started. So first of all, who are the painted people? Who are the painted people? So there, you know, when I say the painted people, I generally am speaking about all Filipinos, because I think we're all the painted people. And we can even go as far into going into the entire Southeast Asia. Painted people specifically was something that Magellan called the Cebuanos when they first came as colonizers in our country. But it's actually interesting because he first called us that, not knowing anything about tattoos and what the tattoos actually stood for. So like, if you know what happened to Magellan, you know that he actually got his head cut off, right, by the Cebuanos. And so this story is very interesting because if he had been from Southeast Asia, he would have known that these tattoos were actually representative of this tribe being of a head hunting tribe, which would have been more of a warning for him. But because he's not from Southeast Asia and he did not understand the language of tattoos, he had no idea. And he was calling us the painted people. You know, he thought it was like this like beautiful adornment of just for beauty. But in reality, what it was a warning to all people who were coming to, you know, interact with our communities, that this is what our tribe, or the Cebuano tribe of that time, Lapu-Lapu's tribe, that's what they actually stood for, was, you know, they are warriors. And that's what the fierceness of these tattoos meant for them and their tribe. And so that also makes this topic so interesting because, you know, it shows us like that cross-cultural what happens when this one culture comes and doesn't know anything about another culture and tries to impose their ways upon our culture. They had no idea. And of course, we know the result of what happened to Magellan during that time. So the painted people, I personally think if there's anything that you're going to take from this entire class or this entire talk, is I want you to remember, and I'm going to touch on this over and over again, that tattoos in Southeast Asia specifically were a part of our language. They were a visual language, a visual representation to all people of the islands, of our stories, of who we are. And so each island had very different representations. And so that's why, you know, I could show you like a million different types of designs and different types of things that each island specifically did. But even if you go all the way to, you know, the Hawaiian Polynesian tattoos, you will see a similarity. And even the way we speak and even the way we write, tattoo, you will see that we have so much similarities to all islanders of Southeast Asia. So I think that that's really interesting because a lot of people don't know how intricate this language visually is in our history. It is so intertwined with our history, but it is so forgotten because, of course, once the colonizers arrived, they told us no more tattoos. And I don't know if they did this on purpose. Some believe it was on purpose, and some believe it was just, you know, part of the culture of, you know, our colonizers to not contribute into, you know, ink on their skin. And so that's why they said, you know, bawal naman ang tattoos, so no tattoos. But it did destroy an integral part of our community and our history, which was our written language on our bodies. And so this is something that I really find to be something that I think most Filipinos, and I think a lot of Southeast Asia, does not really understand how intimate this design work was to each person, and also how we represented ourselves and our tribes to each other. So one thing, a scenario that I love for you to get into is the fact that we were mostly fishermen. You know, we're obviously from a place of islands. And so lots of times fishermen would actually end up on a whole other island on accident because of a shipwreck or who knows what happened, right? And what would end up happening is there was this inability to communicate with each other verbally because of how many languages we have. And if you don't already know this, I'm sure you do, but we have 78 official languages in the Philippines and even more dialects, right? So it's very difficult to verbally communicate with each other during this time period, you know, before pre-colonial Philippines. And even people from the Philippines would sometimes get shipwrecked in Indonesia or all the way in Hawaii, and even all the way here in the Pacific coast of North America. And so if you actually study the Pacific coast of North America, a lot of the indigenous people here actually came from Southeast Asia. And so a lot of times there would be moments when there was no way to interact with each other, no way to communicate, except for the visual aids that we actually represented on our bodies. And so that's how thick this is in our history. And people don't realize that this is actually an entire language that has been lost, a visual language that has been lost. And so let's get into that a little bit. What were these tattoos representing, and how did people read? And so how did people read each other's tattoos? How do people interact via tattoos? So for each tribe had different representations of what, like what they did specifically, what kind of tribes they were. So some tribes were, for instance, headhunters. Some tribes were, for instance, fishermen tribes. And some tribes were, hunter-gatherers. And so they had different ways to represent this. But for the most part, almost all tribes of Southeast Asia would represent this by putting the story of their mother on the left side of their body and putting the story of their father's lineage on the right side of their body. And so let's say you were that fisherman that got stranded in Indonesia or wherever you ended up, you would be able to just say, hey, check it out. I actually have the entire story drawn out on my skin of my family. And you would be able to explain to them through your visual aids what you're capable of doing and what you represent in your tribe in that moment. And so this was such an intimate art form, and it was incredibly powerful for us to be able to teach people who we were through this art form. And till this day, I think that that is such a great representation of what tattoos truly mean to people, even till this day. And I think we can see that in the way people interact with tattoos even till now. Like, hey, this is what is representative for me of who I am and what my story is. But the part that is really missing, that we have to now learn how to revitalize, is the family component. So during this time period, we had so much interaction with tattoos in our families. In fact, what most people during this birthright, you would wait for a certain time period in your life, and whether you're 14 or 15, some tribes were even younger than that when they would start getting their ancient birthright tattoos. Depending on the tribe, their whole family would gather, and the women of the tribe would actually help you spread the skin. So it would be a community gathering of people touching you, spreading your skin together so that the ink would hit your skin in a beautiful fashion. And it was like, the more powerful these tattoos became, they were more powerful, or looked at more powerful, if your family was involved, if the tribe was involved. And then it would be like a community party afterwards, the lechon, bring the lechon out. So during this time period, we really looked at tattooing as a community. And we looked at the things that were marked on our skin as representations of our family. And so I think that is something that we have lost. And I don't know how we're going to gain that back. But I think even just this class alone can be very powerful for people, because of how, to this day and age, most Filipino families look at tattooing as a parang bawal talaga. Like, it's not looked at in a good way. And we have to bring that back into the family unit. And it's very difficult when we have forgotten our history. So that's a big part of what, I think can bring us back to what we were doing in the past, is to discuss what are Indigenous tattoos to us today. That can be something that we have to remember, is that we have to think about what happened in the past. And, we cannot bring back that anymore. But what we can do is create new art forms, new designs, new things that can represent our mother's side of our family and our father's side of our family, just like in the past. And we can have new tattoos that represent that. And I think that it's just such an important thing, again, to go back to remembering that this is a familial thing. This is about our tribe. This is about us going back in time and finding what are the remnants of our specific tribes. So something that I did want to touch upon is, for instance, the artwork of the tribe of Wangud, which is today looked at as quote unquote Filipino tattoos. And it is a Filipino tattoo, but I do think that it is important to remember that those tattoos are not of all of our tribes. So unless you are actually from the Kalinga tribe of Wangud, you are not going to be able to say this is specifically your tattoo and your family's tattoos, right? So I think that it is very important to remember this and to touch upon the fact that we have to go to our tribes now. So for instance, I was born in Dumaguete City, Philippines, and that's where I was raised and lived for the last 10 years of my life until I moved back here. And it is so important for me, for instance, to go to Dumaguete City and learn about the specific design styles that were incorporated with the people of my island, so that I can get a tattoo that could revive that. And then hopefully when I have children, I can continue this with them and continue on and on and on and on, right? So that I can revive these designs that were lost. And it is so important that you do the same thing, because if we all go to the Kalinga tribe of the Philippines to get a Kalinga tattoo, we might not be able to contribute to the revitalization of our actual tribe's design work and their actual artistry. So this is a very important aspect of us being able to bring back what it really means to have an ancient birthright tattoo from our tribe, from our family, and to understand that it is so important to bring this back and to be able to go travel. And you know what, that's a thing too with like, if you have gone to the Kalinga tribe, you know, most people will say it was such an adventure to get there. And that's what I think is such an important thing too for all Filipino Americans and Filipinos in general, to go back to our lineage and really go back to these hometowns and find out who is still doing tattoo here, who is still bringing back this ancient birthright, and how can we contribute to the growth of that. Because each tattoo artist, like even for myself, as much as I'm doing this work, we cannot do this work without you, the skin, the people who want to get this tattoo, the people who want to revive this birthright. So it is so important. And I think that is such a beautiful part of this journey as well. So the women, I also wanted to remind you that this is about communication, but for the most part, what were we also communicating? So the women in these tribes were always the ones naturally who would have all these beautiful adornments. And so women were very commonly tattooed from head to toe at times, depending on the amount of royalty, I guess they were looked at in their tribe. So what were their roles in their tribe? That's usually how they ended up getting like what they were adorned with, you know. So a lot of royalty would have like these extravagant chest pieces or these like headdress pieces and different types of royalty adornments depending on their tribe. So you cannot even imagine how incredibly detailed and how different each adornment is depending on the tribe itself and which part of Southeast Asia and which part of the Philippines they are from. And so that's royalty. But even somebody who is like, let's say she's a gardener and she, you know, like interacted with her community in that way, maybe in that tribe, they would tattoo and adorn a specific type of adornment for her. Now, men, usually in Southeast Asian tribes, they wouldn't get a tattoo unless they really proved themselves to be providers of the community. And I think that that's a really powerful thing too to understand, is that women were really the holders of this ancient birthright. And if you understand too that what the tattoo industry looks like today, it is very male dominated. And so, you know, this is something that I think that I'm very passionate about bringing back, is the reminder that this was something that women did together. You know, we gathered around each other at a certain age, and we taught our young how to withstand pain together as a community. And this was a beautiful thing and a birthright for all women. And we would sit together, just like, you know, at a certain time period, women would get their menstrual cycle and we would all discuss this together as a community. This was also something we all did at some point in our life with our community as women. And then when men would get to the ancient birthright of learning how to be a hunter, how to be a gatherer for the community, how to be leaders in the community, that is when the women of the tribes would decide what we would tattoo on the men, depending on what they were able to provide for the community. And that is powerful because, as I said in the beginning, a reminder that we were called the painted people. So if all of Southeast Asia, we had so many tattoos because the men in our communities showed up so strongly for the women in the community during this time period for the Cebuanos, and also even all over the Philippines, we were tattooed, a lot of tribes were tattooed from head to toe, but specifically the Cebuano tribes. And so I think that that's such a beautiful depiction and a reminder of how powerful our communities were as Filipinos, and how powerful the men of our tribes were, and how much they were headhunters, talaga, like they were really known as headhunters because they were willing to protect our tribes. And if, you know, as history, even in the history you probably have heard, they did protect our tribes to the end. You know, they were very powerful warriors even until the end of these tribal communities. So I think that that's such a big thing to touch on, and it's a very important part of this conversation. And also, how can we bring this back? How do we bring back our community of tattoo people who have tattoos? And also, how do we bring back this familial unit? How do we create new ways of getting tattoos? So like I said, again, go back to your hometown. Go all the way back to your lineage. Ask your mom and dad. Ask your grandparents what did they hear about when it came to these ancient tattoos. And a lot of people might not remember, and maybe there's nothing, but I guarantee if you go all the way back to your hometown, you will find people still in the bukid who are still doing these ancient birthrights, often under the table because they don't think that they will be respected by their community, even though this is something that we actually have so much of. And in my personal experience, like living in the Philippines, I would always get this comment na, hala ate, if I had white skin like you, parang I would get all these tattoos. And as somebody who studies tattoos, it would literally destroy me because I would have to explain to people, the younger generation, that, hey, you know what? This tattoo is your birthright. It is our people's birthright, the Filipino people's birthright. I'm mixed Spanish and Filipino. So, it's a very conflicting feeling for me to hear somebody who is purely Filipino from the island say to me that, oh, if only I was white skin. Huh? No, this is yours. This is the people of the islands. This is our birthright. And so it is a very important thing to remember and remind others of. And I think that the fact that you joined this talk just shows that you are one of those people who can carry this story and also tell other people about it as well. So I would like to get a little bit into questions if anybody has any. Let's see here in the question box in the chat now.
So we can do questions a couple of different ways. If anybody wants to write something into the chat, or if you just want to go ahead and unmute yourself and show your video, and you can just ask your question live, because we've actually got kind of a small group. So who has questions for questions about what we just talked about?
And maybe you have some questions too.
I thought it was really fascinating, the whole thing about the mother's history and the father's history actually being tattooed on one side or the other. I wasn't aware of all of that. I knew that there's a lot of symbolism behind the tattoos, but I didn't realize that, the storytelling that was actually done on specific parts of the body.
Yes, and this is actually what made me fall in love with learning more about tattoos specifically. Specifically, Southeast Asian tattoos were all about storytelling. And we are storytellers. We love to gather around the campfire and talk about the stories of our tribes and what we believed to be the stories of creation, for instance. And so us having these tattoos would be, literal symbolisms of the pain that our ancestors went through. We would also go through that. And so that sound that I was, tapping in on in the beginning, that chok, 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 that is a sound that all of our ancestors felt, with different tools. We use many different tools in different tribes. Some would do the tapping method, but it would still have that sound, chok, chok, chok. And then we'd also have different methods, like having a rose thorn. In some parts of the Philippines, we'd have different types of plants specific to the island, we would sharpen those thorns, and those thorns would be what we would use to create the needle that would enter our skin, and it would still have that sound. And as a tattoo artist today, I get to experience that sound every time I do a tattoo, and it is a powerful sound because it is something that I know my ancestors heard during their ancient birthrights, and so did yours. And yeah, so each little marking that would represent our family story on both sides of our bodies, we would go through physical pain to represent our family. And I think that's really such a beautiful part of our culture. Like that's how hardcore we are when it comes to, representing our family, that Filipino pride that we feel. That's something our ancestors also had. And they had it so much that they would literally inflict pain on themselves to represent it as ink on their skin.
Yeah, it's so cool, the whole concept of tattoo as language.
Yes.
Because of the fact we have, if you've got somebody who's speaking Ilocano, somebody speaking the Cebuano, somebody speaking Tagalog, you don't necessarily understand each other. There might be a little bit of similarity with some of the words, but if you're from Mindanao, as opposed to somebody who's from the north and like Iloilo, we're talking completely different dialects, and there's no way to understand each other. But with the visual graphic of the tattoo as language, being able to tell story, that was a way at least to bring the different tribes together.
Exactly. And you can actually see this similarity even in the tattoos of Polynesian tattoos all the way in Hawaii. And I think that is something so important because, a lot of times when people think of indigenous Southeast Asia, they think of, people who didn't have this like modern technology that maybe the colonizers, quote unquote, had at the time period. But no, we actually had something so modern in the sense of we had this ancient way of communicating with each other that was beyond, just being able to speak verbal language. And even the way we would draw things and the way we actually, even our written language looks is very similar. And that is also an incredible aspect. Even phonetically, a lot of the words we would say, like even the way we would say tattoo, tata, tattoo, tate, like there's many different similarities in even the way we said tattoo in all of Southeast Asia and all of these indigenous tribes.
So you talked a little bit about the different implements that would be used for doing the tattoo art. What did they use for inks?
Ooh, that's a good question. So ink is almost always made out of soot. And this is actually such a big part also of why this was such a community program, like creating a tattoo for your skin had so much to do with the community, because a lot of times the soot would come from fires of the celebrations that we would have together as a tribe. So whenever we would come together as a tribe and have a little party, the soot of the fire that was burned, during this celebration, we would gather that soot, all the women would gather that soot and then create their own mixture that would be their own version of how they create ink. And till this day, that is still technically how ink is made, even in, but in more of a, in a different setting, obviously not in that way, but we've lost that, which is actually something that I think is such an important part of the practice of getting a tattoo with your community, because each individual part of getting the tattoo was such a community thing, all the way to the ingredients, not just the designs that we were getting on our skin, but also like even the plants that, the rose bush that we would use, like let's say it was a rose bush, or they have like different flowers that they might use that they would sharpen to create the needle. These are flowers and things that are grown in the community, so that's something energetically that we were giving in the community. And then also the soot and the fire that was being used in a tribal setting like that. And then being able to say that during this party or this gathering of our tribe, we would actually use that material. This was such a connection that we have lost today in the practice of tattoos, because obviously everything is industrialized now when it comes to the tools of tattooing. So
you mean literally the ash and debris from the fires from these events would actually be used as the material for making the tattoo ink? How cool.
Exactly. Isn't it amazing?
I have a question.
Mhm.
I'm going to bring it back to the present because I'm loving all this history background. But in the present sense, I know you didn't go too much into what you do for your art and your profession, but I want to hear kind of about that because I'm not going to out Marinka, but Marinka and I both have tattoos. We both gotten work done. Sorry, I just outed Marinka. We both had work done. And, she's got some big stuff. I got some little stuff. And I've, done it in the more traditional, not traditional, but in the westernization version with a pen, right? And sitting there in this completely different experience, right? So
Yes.
my question is, since you do this kind of tattooing and hand poke, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What does that conversation sound like when you're introducing somebody to this method and they're like only familiar with this other method? Like, how do you walk them through that process? And definitely, please go into detail about the connection of designing that tattoo together as the artist and the person getting the work done. I'm really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, so there's wow, that's such a lengthy conversation on its own, but definitely definitely have so what I do is what I call hand poke manifestation tattoos. That's like my main like thing that I do, which is where I take what people want to attract and manifest in their life, and then I create a design specific for them. Now, what I'm hoping to create also for others, and this is difficult because in the Filipino community, we look at tattoos often as, dirty or something, like we have this like colonized mentality over it. So it's very hard for me to actually find families who want to be participants in this. And so this is something that I want to cultivate, deeply want to cultivate with families. And I want it to be able to create this like new like rhythm where, hey, like mothers ask their daughters to go with them to make a tattoo that could be passed down as well into their lineage. But again, this is all still starting up again. And I want to make that really clear that this is a reemergence of our history and it has been lost. And so this is something that we all have to collectively create together. And that's actually really beautiful. And I've been asked to, because I do these manifestation tattoos, I have luckily been asked by a lot of Filipino women, my age usually, to create designs that are all about tapping in and connecting with their ancestors. And that is such a beautiful thing that I get to do. And I create these designs with my own knowledge of, the artistry that I know from Filipino tattoos. But like I said, it is so important for each of us to go, try to do our own research, go back home, try to find people who may or may not know a little bit about what has been lost. And one thing too, before I forget, is one of the reasons why so much of our history as Filipinos have been lost, and people forget about this. We wonder why, how come did the Spaniards just burn all of the writings, the Filipino writings of our history? No, actually, a lot of it was really literally written on our skin. And so when we were told to stop transferring this story onto our children, that is a big part of why we actually did lose our history. And we forget this because we literally were told not to remember. And so this is something that we're never going to get that history back. But what we can do is begin to create new ways of integrating this knowledge into our personal lives and into our familial units. And so that's a lot of what I do is just talking to people and just trying to explain this so that we can get people, to continue and to start participating as well. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting a machine tattoo. I totally have a whole different passion and love for the history of tattoos when it comes to that aspect, and that is also very deep rooted aspect of tattooing that is very Western. It has a whole other Western history class coming up for you on that one. But for specifically indigenous Filipino tattoos, you know, we have to go back to using these raw materials. And for me, I choose to still use the materials. I'm not gonna go make soot ink, but I can maybe do a ceremony with you, which is what I do with my clients. I do like a little ceremony where we like light a candle and just discuss like how can we gather our ancestors' energy again, and do similar things to what our ancestors did in the past during the tattoo, because tattooing is not just the aesthetic. You know, it was never just the aesthetic. It was a storytelling. You know, it was a time where we would gather together and remember. I remember when I got my first tattoo. I remember when your grandma got her first tattoo, and your grandma's grandma got her first tattoo. And so that's really what I am currently and hoping to even further integrate into the practice of the future of tattoos, and specifically the future of Filipino tattoos, you know, and Southeast Asian tattoos, is to remind each other that we are the holders of this, you know, future of what the tattoo industry could look like for us. It could be very much about the familial unit.
So, unfortunately, we don't have visuals tonight because we ran into some technical issues. But can you talk a little bit about what some of the symbols would look like and the meaning behind them?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the symbols were usually there. Honestly, there was a lot of drawings of people themselves, literally looking at you would, if you search it yourself, you're gonna see actual symbols that look like hunters, or you know, and some of them would look like actual fishermen. And so, and this is really why it was so integral in the communication aspect, because you can show people what, hey, like my mom might have been an artist, you know, like maybe there was something that symbolized, you know, artistry, maybe like pottery or whatever it was, but I actually do this, so this was passed down, but you know, this is what I really know, and this is what I do. And so when you would be traveling, or whenever you would, like I said before, get shipwrecked or something would happen, you have to communicate with another tribe that may not speak your verbal language, you could actually show them visually what you are doing and what your family did. And so a lot of these designs artistically were literal representations of people doing certain things, whether that's gardening, you know, and they have different ways to represent this, but it would be very like if you see it, you would be like, oh yeah, that's definitely a gardener. Oh yeah, that's definitely a fisherman. Oh yeah, that's definitely a prince or a king or a queen, because they have like these crowns or whatever represented that for them, right? So that's actually a big part of what makes it so interesting to see the design style, because even like if, like, let's say your tribe specifically integrated a lot of different animals into your artwork, like for instance, even in the Kalinga tattoos today, you will see that they have a lot of designs that represent the caterpillar, which is something that is very specific to them, because they also have designs that represent the butterfly. And so this is specific to their tribe, something that they integrated with a lot. So other tribes, like for instance, like if you go to Iloilo and you're going to Bacolod, you're going to see a lot of designs that had these like beautiful birds. And if you know anything about the actual spoken language, you would know that their language has a lot to do like with birds, and people would even say that this language is the bird language, right? So we can see this integrated into the design style of each tribe, and each tribe had a very specific design style, and that's what made it very interesting, because people would be able to spot on like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Cebuano design, or that's definitely from Luzon, or that's definitely from who knows what part of Indonesia. And so being able to like narrow down, oh, maybe this person's from here, or maybe this person's from here, and this is how advanced this type of discovering, or how advanced this language was to each other.
it's amazing how fascinating all of this is, because you see designs and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of a cool tattoo. But now that we have the understanding that there's so much
Yes.
history behind it, now you've got me wanting to go look at my family history and see what goes,
Yes.
see what's
Exactly.
happened with my history when it comes to tattoos. Because my family was one of those where, oh, if you have a tattoo, why are you doing that to yourself?
Exactly.
Without that understanding of what the history is. So now I need to go research it for my family.
Yes, and that's why
Hmm.
I do speak to a lot of families about this, because it is such a shame to hear people say that. And you know, we have this like deep setted Filipino pride, and I'm like, hey, you know, that Filipino pride is also something we had in our ancestors when we did these tattoos. We were so proud of our community, to the point where, like I said earlier, we would allow ourselves to inflict pain on our body just to represent that. That's how powerful and beautiful this was as an ancient birthright.
So anyone else from the audience have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to say? We'll open up the floor for anybody else who'd like to ask anything.
Also, I can drop in, Alethia, your Instagram handle if anybody wants to connect with you. Do
Yes.
you want me to put in your Venus Veritas one or your tattoo one?
Either one is a great way to contact me. I definitely think manifestation tattoos is the best way to contact me for tattoos specifically. So you can search that, manifestation tattoos. But just to interact with me and to talk to me about this topic, I'm very passionate about it. So you can definitely message me on any, and you can also put my email as well, lifeofveritas@gmail.com. You can totally contact me there, and we can discuss more about tattooing. And just in general, we can discuss more about what we can do as a community, because you know what, we lost this thing as a community. We've lost it, but the only way we're going to bring it back is as a community, is in the familial unit. And so I always say this, the only way we can bring this back is if we as women today, specifically as women, because like I said before, it was women who always did the tattoos in the past. It was almost always women who were doing the tattoos in all Southeast Asian tribes. Honestly, even in the entire world, if you're really studying native tattoos, it was almost always women who did this ancient birthright onto our family skin. So as women, it is kind of like our way, like it's only going to be us who's going to be able to pass this down to our children, and hopefully in the hopes that they will also pass it down to their children. And so that's how deep set this is. Like this is that's the only way we're going to be able to continue this practice and create a new practice.
Any books or websites that you recommend to find out more on the tribal tattoos?
Yes. So there is an incredible tattoo anthropologist, and this is another thing too, that it's, you know, tattoo anthropology is not well funded, and a lot of people don't want to admit how integrated tattoos are into, you know, our historical anthropological studies of these cultures. And there is an incredible tattoo anthropologist named Lars Krutak. You can search all about him on YouTube, everywhere. Lars Krutak. He's a tattoo anthropologist. He is actually the reason why Wang Ud from the Kalinga tribe has so much coverage till this day, because he went to Wang Ud years and years ago to study the Kalinga tribe. And Lars Krutak was the reason why she was able to be sent to Canada and all over the world to discuss her tribe's ancient tattoos. But Lars Krutak also got tattoos and learned about ancient birthrights in all these different Southeast Asian countries. So you don't have to just study only the Filipino tattooing. You can actually hear so much more about, for instance, Thai tattooing, you know, like the monks doing their tattoos. This is also an incredible birthright as well for that culture. But learning what those cultures do versus what our culture does shows you how integrated, like how deep it is depending on what your tribe does and who your tribe is and what your tribe believed and what our story of creation was and what we were as people at that time. It's very specific to us depending on where we were born in our lineage.
See, it looks like we've got another question in the chat. Do you have one tattoo that tells parts of your story?
Oh, many. I think every single tattoo that I have is about the mythology of who I am. You know, who am I as a person? And I think that that's something that I personally have always told all of my clients, and specifically people who have never been tattooed. People always ask me, well, why do you get tattoos? And I say, it's honestly just a representation of my personal mythos. Who I am as a person is represented through the designs that I've chosen. And I tell people this a lot. Don't choose a design just for the aesthetic, just because it might make you feel beautiful. That's one tiny little aspect of a tattoo. If you get a design that is representative of who you feel you are and your family is, and you get a design that represents what you want to stand for and what you want to represent as a human being, you will never feel guilt for that tattoo. And so and as a tattoo artist, I've met a lot of people who say, oh, well, I got this design and I don't really like it anymore. I guarantee if you ask them, did you think before you got this design about what this design means to you and your family and a deeper sense of your personal mythos? I promise you, they did not think of that. And I guarantee if you get a tattoo for you to represent your people and to represent you as who you want to become and to empower you, you will never have regrets about this tattoo. I guarantee that. So that's something that I think all of the tattoos that I have represent different sides of me and different adventures I've had. A lot of them are even the adventure of me learning to tattoo on myself. So that's an incredible aspect too of me as an artist. And so I can't even, people always ask me, what's your favorite tattoo? And I'm like, how can I even begin? I usually just say my most recent tattoo, because that's where I am right now. And the rest of the designs are a story to tell. And, you know, I look forward to being a mother one day and being able to actually explain this story to hopefully my daughter or whoever my children are. And I represent these designs all the time and explain these stories to people every time I interact with people about my tattoos. Yes, I do share my tattoos on my IG. I have manifestation tattoos designs. That's manifestation tattoo. That all of those designs are my own designs that I've created. My own tattoos, I also post often in that design page. I also have Venus Veritas art. Venus Veritas art, that specific page is all designs that I've created specifically with intention to represent whatever it is the person wants to manifest. And those designs are all one of a kind. I never repeat a design. I never take a design and repeat it. I think the only thing that would ever get me to repeat a design is if I was going to do the same design on your children. To pass on that ancestry.
So just me, does everyone just want to go get tattoos now?
Yes, go get
one now. I'm getting that feeling. I need a new one.
There's one thing that you get from this. I hope that's what you get.
Makes me so want another one right now.
Yes. And you know, like that's a thing too. I think like as women, we're often feel shy to get tattoos, or we feel like, oh, but you know, maybe it's not, you know, gonna be respectful to our bodies or whatever it is that we've been, you know, fed throughout our, you know, history. But in reality, it was our thing. It was a woman's thing to get tattoos from the beginning. So,
well, it's kind of funny you talk about the familial aspect of it, because my son and I actually have matching tattoos.
Oh, I love that.
So when he went, when he was in the Navy, and he was going on his first deployment, he had asked that, because I was supposed to go with him when he got his first tattoo, but he was already in the service, and so that didn't happen. But for his first deployment, he wanted us to go get tattoos. So we actually have matching tattoos. They're exactly the same design, just in different colors, because the colors have different meanings for him and the colors have different meanings for me.
Wow, isn't that beautiful? You see, you were already doing it. You are already hearing your ancestors, even though you had no idea.
You're right. I had no idea, but now I need to look into it more.
Yes.
So with that, we're actually at time at this point. This was a fantastic way to actually wrap up Filipino History Month. So excited to have you, talk about your art and the history behind it. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure all of us now are going to be looking up. Noelle dropped a lot of links in the chat, so make sure you grab those, folks, because she's got the tattoo anthropologist that was mentioned, all of the links to IG, so everything's in there. And as I mentioned, we will be posting this on our YouTube page. So if you look for our Facebook for NAP San Jose, for NAP San Jose, also our website, we'll have information on links on how to get to that. And we'll probably post all this great information that was in here. So the IG links, we can actually post a quick thing on our Facebook, so people can actually be able to grab that. And in case you didn't get a chance to do this now. We've got a lot of stuff coming up actually for 2023. It's towards the end of the year already, so we're kind of winding down things for NAP San Jose. But one last thing for us is that we are looking for more people to join our leadership team. So if you're interested in being part of NAP San Jose's leadership team and helping pull together events like this, you can put in as much time or as little time as you want. We're very flexible with that. But if you're interested, just send a quick email to hello@nap.sanjose.org, or just drop us a message on our Facebook, and we'll get back to you. We're always looking for more people. There's always plenty of things to do. And as I said, it's as little time or as much time as you actually want to put into it. But with that, Noelle, any final thoughts to close us out?
No, I'm just trying to put all the links in. So everyone has all the info that they need, everything that everyone's saying. I'm trying to be on top of the admin.
Yes, you.
Marketing, got to connect everybody. No, just I will also echo what everyone else is saying and just thank Alethia so much for sharing your story and basically our stories, really, all of us. It was a dare I say spiritually connecting experience on a Thursday night in October.
She skipped the whole month there.
I know.
So with that, Alethia, thank you so much again for the fascinating information. And for everyone who tuned in tonight, thank you so much, especially our East Coast folks. I know it's super late for all of you. As I said, check out the NAP San Jose webpage, our Facebook, our Instagram. It's the best way to connect with us. But with that, we'll call it a good evening. Night, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks
So much.